But is Sonic.exe was the hero? Hello boys, girls, people from other worlds, my name is Star-Punz. If you haven't seen any of the parts of the story, then please be sure to watch them. There's only one part so far. I don't know why I phrased it like that. To put it bluntly, I did not expect this much support from everybody whatsoever. It warms my heart that everyone has reached out to me with their own ideas, interpretations, and projects within the EXE fanbase. It's been very welcoming, so I thank you all. Hopefully I can keep making more and more stories for all of you to enjoy, as I love this style of content. So please, leave down below some scenarios I can do. I'm already planning a bunch of stuff. Oh my god. I love this format, I really do. If you guys love my stories, I'll be sure to keep making them. I gotta churn them out anyway. So yeah, I feel like R.L. Stein, but with Sonic. But since now we're getting straight into things, I should warn all of you that this is not going to be taken as seriously. This is a fun audio reading of a story I cooked up out of sheer boredom. If anyone wants to use these characters or settings, please contact me for my business email, northsidist16@gmail.com. For any of your Roblox, Friday Night Fun, I don't care. I kept getting requests for this shit, okay? I just want to see something. I want to see a visual. Alright? I don't want to take word from somebody in the comments. Oh, can I use this? I don't know. What is it for? Just show me something, and I promise you, you can put Cedus in a monkey suit fishing for tires. I don't care. With that out of the way, I want to present Cedus 2, Electric Boogaloo. We open our story with a far-out desert, a once-prided oasis of bustling money gambling. I would say fun, but otherwise poor decisions. Casino night. All of its pinball machines and lights in ruins. Amidst the faded memories, a driver could be seen from the horizon, in which we picked up where her victim was left before. A 10-year jump from the first invasion, now known to the citizens as the homecoming. Since then, Cedus has been forced to go from city to city to free as many people as he can. But this day was special out of the span of a decade. It was going to be his birthday. He drove a car that seemed to be in the same likeness as Tails.exe, made from the corpse of multiple demons that hailed down from the sky. Motors constructed inside the skin of a walker. He felt a great sorrow for having to do this to a fellow soldier. He has now chained himself to the mortal realm, meaning his body was to die like one. As he passes statues of dices, he decides to make a pit stop in front of the highest tower he could find, in which he then breathes into silence for a second, feeling the cooling warmth of the sun. Cedus groans, in which he begins banging his head against the die, revealing a little girl sitting in his car, lounging in the back with her shoes kicked up on the seats. This was the successor of Tails.exe, given the name Majin by Cedus, a young red panda that Cedus had kidnapped in order to halt the progress of the sin of envy. See, the demon that possesses Tails was smart enough to make a deal with the thoughts, but didn't have the capacity to lead anything to establish a network into Tails' brain. So, he needed somebody who could access a part of his brain that nobody else could, in which he enlisted the help of this critter. Cedus took it upon himself to take her, as she's both the lead in the Envy Kingdom and the only lead he has for something far more important. The only issue? She's a pain in the ass, but has been teaching Cedus for the last couple of months the sciences of this planet in order to inhabit his own power. adaptation. Just as they were both taking a breather, Cedus's nose started to twitch, only to sneeze. This was a sign from the body he knew all too well, and which he then ushered Majin to get ready. She was already starting to groan even more until she saw from the horizon a mark she knew all too well. Her shoulder had the symbol of it as well. The bare number 2 in Roman numerals. It was the Envy Kingdom's brigade. All Roadhogs riding disfigured faces of the past hero, Sonic. His face plastered on the engines of garbage trucks, planes, bikes, all of the drivers with the symbols of the number 2. Their appearances a slight variation between them all despite being foxes. Some were missing fingers, hands, arms, an extra ear or an extra leg. It was customary for anyone entering the Envy Kingdom to be mutated in a way or chosen for what they called gifts, with the Legion's king sitting in his blood-covered throne of demon horns. He yelled out for the name all of the prisoners and followers of war have longed to kill for. Sonic! Majin and Cedus went into overdrive as their car drifted towards the sandlands, the bandits behind them launching missiles and bayonets of the past, while Majin reached into her pocket and they continued to follow the tracker. She noted that the signature was close, not at all far. But whilst all the foxes wanted was blood, the duo had their sights on something far more valuable. Cedus passed a bag filled with old guns Shadow the Hedgehog used to use, in which he started hooking them up to the gear in an automated system. Cedus plucked a hair from his own quills and gave it to her. While Cedus can no longer run at light speed, his energy remains the same, in which Majin ported it inside of an energy console for the weapons that fired anything that even touched an inch closer. It was like 50 guns all shooting at the same time. It was working. None of the half-brained foxes could come close. They were too focused on the blood they started to topple into one another, bashing their heads in only to explode. Tails watched inside of his own vessel. The Envy Sin. He played with a checkerboard. It was used for every fight he was ever in which he brought out the king piece. We see what the hedgehog was going towards, the large remains of a Robotnik bronze statue from Stardust Highway. Cedus plucked another part of his hair to place inside of his car engine, pushing the fuel into overdrive as they boosted into light speed. That brought them about 10 minutes. They arrived at the scene, toppling the car into pieces that could no longer withstand its injuries. The tortured demon who inhabited the car cried for it to be over, only for Cedus to poke it in between its eyes straight towards the brain, with his bare hands harvesting its flesh, watching as his own kind squealed by his fingers. Majin patted a gun or two they can use, noting that Cedus has to watch his own blood levels from now on. Giving away too much of his energy can cause serious strain. Cedus flinches, but continues. Even killing the enemy has its own backdraw. He told her to check the clock. He has 3 days left. Cedus was going to die on his birthday. As they walked, Majin had to help him up, but he just grabbed another drink from the demon he'd left just barely alive. Considering it as collateral, he was back to his prime. They entered a bronze statue of Robotnik, leaping down from cliff to cliff as Majin's locator blinked more and more from the signal getting stronger. The insides of the statue had breathing walls, flesh plastered around it, eyelids opening and closing, teeth chattering. A hand or two reached out for Majin. She shrieked in fear only for Cedus to kill it by a foot stomp. Continuing on, they find a signal in the heart of the decaying Eggman, an all too familiar foe, now in hopes of becoming their ally. Metal Sonic. Majin bolted to the machinery, admiring it for its well-done craftsmanship, wiring it to the last quill Cedus gave her. She complimented just how brilliant the doctor was. Cedus suggested that maybe all of his brains were inside of his stomach. He would have been such a tasty snack. Majin states that's awful, until Cedus puts it into perspective. If you want a good burger, you go straight for the cow. Their banter is interrupted by the entire statue shaking in its place. Cedus looks down at the locator, but the militia was still miles away. But a brighter, more dangerous beacon began to pick up on his tracker. It started blinking so hard that it exploded in his hands. Cedus sneezed, only to be met with 4 hands piercing through the bronze walls, creating a crater in its wake. It was Knuckles. The sin of pride! Since the sin of pride in his lineage, he had now fused with the past corpses of his Echidna tribe, formulating the perfect warrior for the tribe that died to its own misguidance to war. Cedus attached, looked down and around in a hurry, only for Majin to pass 2 AK-47s. Cedus's toothy grin sharpened as he melted his own hands inside of the guns, with the guns themselves becoming part of his skin. See, the thing about Cedus's body was it was decaying, it was formulating, it was trying to melt in on itself with less and less blood. But he learned that he can adapt to it with other machinery. In which then Cedus kicked a pack of bullets into the air, lifted his head up, and ate the whole box of ammo. His aim was terrible to say, but his bullets rained enough for the Echidna to flinch, only to start punching back the ammo. Considering they were all fueled with the energy of Sonic the Hedgehog, he took quite a hit each time. It was like a spin dash to the face every damn bullet. Knuckles had to move. Pride ripped his own arm off, launching it like a missile. Cedus moved out of the way in time, but it left a hole in the wall that signaled the rest of the Envy Kingdom to their position, as it erupted like a firework. Cedus pulled back his shoulders, aiming his arms at the ground as he used his own ammo as a way to fly, having a jetpack joyride to chase down the Echidna, as he left the statue to continue the fight, leaving Majin enough time to continue her own coding. Cedus crashed into Pride, falling towards the enemy of Envy right dead in the center of his militia, crashing about 30 vehicles alone, injuring most of the army. The very sin that had been chasing them down from the very beginning, Envy, comes from the shadows of his army's rubble. As his technology then started to shift, the car's doors and windows all opening and consuming any of the remaining militia at the ground, consuming the soldiers' flesh. Cedus felt their very pain. It was like he was dying every second. All he could do about it? Smile. Cedus latches his arms onto a car, chucking it to Envy as Pride threw another arm straight at Cedus. With each arm that was thrown, it regrew the very moment it was latched off. The sin had an entire family tree encoded inside of himself. All while the tail beast was getting sent to a truck. Cedus is hit by Pride's arm, blowing up on his face. Pride walked through the flames he left behind, only to be met with a wrecking ball to the face. The Envy army took a lot of Eggman's brute force machinery. Pride shut it off, only to be met with 1,000 more bullets to the face in the span of a second. Envy awoke from his injuries, crawling on all fours in mere seconds to scratch Cedus across the face. His skin now badly injured, only to replace a flesh wound by transferring the AK-47 from his arm to his eye, shooting the thoughts right in the throat. Cedus was having so much fun with the carnage, finally being able to not feel any remorse for his killing. That was until his ammo depleted. He dropped his weapons, scurrying away as the two beasts lunged at him. Pride and Envy knocked their heads against one another and began to banter, giving Cedus enough time to recompose himself. He hid behind Eggman's bulldozer, reaching into his phone asking Majin how's the progress. She states it's almost done, only to be met with a sudden error screen. The quill had lost all of its power from the usage in the weapons. She needed a charge from Sonic's body. Just one more spark from him, Cedus had to think. While the two titans clashed, the soldiers then pointed out that Cedus was hiding behind the bulldozer. The two deadly sins clashed into one another, trying to go for the kill first. That was until Cedus had an idea. Cedus looked at Majin's location, asking her to describe her trajectory, needing for a spark from far away. She did the calculations using a stone, noting that he to aim 23 degrees from his position. Cedus thought this was perfect. He connected the wires of the bulldozer towards the middle of his eyes. It was good to lose his sight to something so beautiful. The bulldozer began to spew in its energy, rotating at a fast speed, spinning into the light speeds. He harnessed all of his energy to one singular point into the tip of the drill. Envy and pride shuddered in fear, trying to run away, only to be met with the greatest output of energy ever done on the planet Earth within the last century. The beam stretched on for miles on end, killing Envy and Pride's very being to the core, and hitting dead on the singular point Metal Sonic's energy input needed, going beyond 100% charge. This was 1,000,000%! As the dust settled, all that was left was a crater of ash. Anyone who was in the presence of such a beam was extinguished to the very atom. Since Cedus couldn't run with his deteriorating body, that kinetic energy was at a constant waiting moment, his very heart beating with such energy at all times. It'll take some time to recharge, but he was just tired. He wanted it all to be done with, but he just had some more work to do. He took one of the cars from the militia, driving on until parking right in front of the statue, as he met up with his hostage. But at this point he would rather die than spend another minute with her. Her voice was like nails on a chalkboard to him, but it was worth it. As she wheeled in the tube that contained the metal Sonic, opening the pod as it then ushered a gust of smoke. Cedus and Majin watched in amazement by process of elimination. The real Sonic was right in front of them. Monster they had to go across from. Metal ran the database, looking at Cedus, knowing his biology was Sonic but not the same. Cedus tells him that he's gone, that the only one who can claim the title is now Metal, and that they need him to take up that mantle of a hero now. A few hours later, they sat around a campfire. Metal plays tit-tat-toe with Majin, as Cedus starts to cook for Majin as well, noting that she lights her ads over easy. He was getting better at it. Metal stares at Majin's number 2 on her shoulder, in which she said she was branded by the Envy Kingdom before becoming the royal scientist, as the demon that took over Tails didn't like to leave anything without his permission. Metal questioned who was truly the smartest now then. She answers it might be the Professor Eggman, but nobody knows where he is. Metal has already tried to contact him, but nothing. He was an enigma. Cedus serves Majin her aids, now knowing just how exactly she likes them, though she starts to whine that he didn't make her any coffee, and only for himself. He notes that she's just a kid. She then brings up the point that she once tore Kai's head off for him to chew on. Cedus chuckles knowing that he did it just to creep her out. Just as he took some coffee, his insides began to burn, causing a sudden cough and blood. Majin sighs as she began to pull out her supplies. Metal leans on over, asking what they're even doing. Majin explains that Cedus kidnapped her from the Envy Kingdom to hurt their progress in doing so, but it seems like they've gotten along well, and now she has the role of caretaker for him. Considering they dismantled the Envy Kingdom by now, there's still a lot left in the list now. The 7 deadly sins. Metal questions how Cedus even knows any of this. He says that they read it off of a fortune cookie, but in fact, the Eclipse King announced that all deadly sins were to meet on the moon, to fight to a tournament of death before they can colonize the stars, deciding who can hold all 7 Chaos Emeralds to conquer the cosmos. A contract by demons can never be broken. Metal Sonic collects the information into his database, asking for Cedus to allow him to access all of his memories to catch up. Placing his palm on Cedus's forehead, he was able to collect all of the information of the last decade. Even further than that, however. Cedus's entire life, decades, centuries, lifetimes. Metal Sonic has pierced into the dimension where Cedus came from. A cold, cold world that saw time and destiny as locations, rather than reference of time. A demon sitting in a crystal box, alone for eternity, watching as a life begins and dies over and over again. This was the hell every demon came from. But even further than that, Metal knew the truth. Cedus had been lying to Majin from the very beginning. She doesn't know he was the one who made the contracts. She didn't know he was responsible for the homecoming. As they prepared for bed, Cedus was covered in stitches and bandages, thinking to himself just how lovely a world would be if he had the free will of other creatures. Metal Sonic walks up to him just as he was about to sleep, kneeling down beside him, piercing down at him with a gaze. That was all Cedus needed to know, that Metal knew the truth. In fact, it gave him comfort knowing that at least Metal cared, meaning that when he's gone, there'll be someone suitable for this world. Metal Sonic tells him that he'll only help for the sake of this world, and whatever is left of it, and that he will proclaim himself as a real Sonic in its place. That Cedus has failed, and not only in its invader, but its hero. Cedus growled. He smacked Metal across the face before starting to punch him, only to break his knuckles against his silver casing. Metal looked down in pity. He knows he only has until his birthday to live. Metal says he should spend it as best as he can. He understands completely why he wanted to save this planet. After living an eternity as a god and a life as a man, he wants to leave something of value. Anything. And so two of the loneliest beings on the planet had finally crossed paths, and it gave Cedus comfort knowing someone else has nothing. Cedus recalled the promise he made to all of the demon warlords, that this world would feel their freedom, that all vessels wouldn't have to worry about sorrow any longer, any emotions. They would be in a state that they considered heaven, watching as a world burns but no longer a burden to the mortal plane, experiencing the fourth dimension that the demons did. But now he understood that 10 years in his mortal shell, he was starting to wish he could have felt the breeze without feeling its heavy burden, knowing fully well that every blood that turns into ash was because of his own belief that he was a god above men. But now, the torment is too much. He wished he was never a monster to begin with. They arrive at their first stop, Rose Tower. The sin of lust had taken over the vessel of Amy Rose. Some consider her to be the kindest of the entire roster of heroes, wanting nothing but to give her affection to people in need. But now, the sin has taken her form in order to lure in people with the promise of a salvation. They pass through the territory on foot. Cedus held Majin's hand as she tried to hide her mark of the thoughts, while Metal scanned the area. Something seemed wrong. The people here, none of them were in fear. None of them were savages. They were in utter peace. Talking, eating, kissing, drinking. It was as if this place was the safest haven on the planet. But Cedus still told them all to be on high alert. This was something far worse than any other demon they've seen before.
My sweet Sai, you shouldn't have come here.
One of the pedestrians said, straight looking at Cedus. But they didn't aggravate nor attack. The citizen just went on with their shopping at the market, until Cedus bumps into another person.
You know anyone can smell it off of you. The regret. Your sins.
The lady walks away calmly like nothing happened. Metal started to scan their brains, in which Majin read the chemicals being produced that were shown on Metal's screen. It was a constant flow of endorphins. This level of torture was not in the form of pain, no, it was in joy. They could only feel joy. There was no other emotion to express. They could no longer feel the wind blowing against their face, the food, the strain of muscle. It was a curtain of suffering shadowed by a paradise.
You know I can't resist you. Nobody could.
Cedus sighed as he looked at the crowd following, all of them crying, some of them signing for them to help, or even just to kill them. Majin suggests they've probably been in this state for years. They all made contracts with the sin of lust. They were all her vessel. Majin steps back, holding Cedus' hand before bumping into a man. His entire head was cut off, but only a smile remained. Half of the head, at least.
I'm just doing what a god should do. Peace.
Majin was about to throw up. Metal then boomed the man with a laser. All of the people were perplexed until Majin pulled out 2 rings. The rings of envy and pride, throwing them at Metal Sonic. This was the reason they wanted the machine in the first place. To be the dead vessel no sin can ever possess once they're dead. Splitting his machine body into 2 parts.
We need to go straight for Lust. Majin, get in the car. Metal clears a path.
Affirmative.
These were formed after being held in such a state of joy. For so long they've truly lost themselves. They were better off dead. But every normal person, now with the power of sin, Metal was capable of cleansing their soul of any connection to the main sin. She would lure them in with a promise of utopia. The only reason no one dared to come into this territory is that it was merely a graveyard. People willingly come here if they want their last moments to be filled with joy, only to wish to feel the warmth of the sun again. Cedus drove through the Sega district with bustling cars filled with drunks and lovers. Majin was directing them based on which route to go, as she had compiled a map of the entire city beforehand. Metal had to keep cleansing them out of Lust's control until they arrive at the train tracks. Majin pointed out that this was the fastest route to Rose Tower, with a party train leading right into the tower itself. So naturally, without a care, Cedus ran right into the train with the car. Cedus, Metal, and Majin landed right on a birthday cake. Considering all time was lost to them, these people were endlessly having fun, pulling out the piñata sticks to bash Cedus' head in, only for Majin to kick them in the face. Metal pushed them off easily, leaving a path for Majin to access the main control center to go right towards the tower. Cedus grabs a bottle of champagne, downing it as he felt it was the first time he was ever going to enjoy it. To enjoy dying. However, one of the citizens looked over at him, drinking an entire bottle.
After all this time, you now want to start rejecting what you are. You are the monster in this expedition.
Just let me die like a mortal.
You already failed as one.
Cedus downed the bottle before smashing the citizen's head with it, only to feel the pain right back at him. But he didn't have time to cry. His tears were all used up. All that was left was the blood that poured out. Cedus came to the main control room of the train, watching it as it arrived right at their destination. The crew boarded off, finding themselves inside of Rose Tower. However, what they found was truly the worst inviting experience. With intestines strung upon the ceiling like streamers, blood soaked the wall, writing, "Happy Anniversary." And in the center, a bare torn off head with candles placed on top of the scalp to form a heart. And hands were torn off to form love hearts. It's been 10 years since Cedus has left his lover. Majin begins to read a sudden surge in aroma, in which she makes a mask for Majin to cover her face from the chemicals. As the sending came, the worst, Lust, sat on a bundle of roses that slowly brought her down. She wore a wedding ring. Cedus looked down in shame.
Oh, you made some friends. You really aren't as heartless as I thought you were.
I just want the pain to end.
You know I can make it stop. You knew that better than anyone. You could have run to my arms, and even if you bled, I would be able to fix it. This contract you placed yourself in, it's so easily fixable. You're punishing yourself, aren't you? I just want you. That's all I've ever wanted. You make it seem like this was our idea. Is that why you've chained your freedom? Is that Your sin? Oh my goodness, you've made your own deadly sin. Freedom.
But why make everyone else suffer?
This world is broken. It always was. These people were thieves, smugglers, abusers, hoarders, leaders. The only reason for my strength is the concentration of sinners in one area of my own sin. That's how deadly sins work. Little girl, you ever wonder where all the other brilliant girls have gone like you? I'm keeping them safe in the top of my tower. You're free to take them if you defeat me. I don't dare want to wish what the Wrath King has planned for them. I couldn't bear giving them away.
Lust passes Cedus a samurai blade. He catches it mid-air while Mita stands beside him, and Majin readies her stance as well behind them.
What does Wrath want with them?
Oh, my dear Sai, don't you remember? This planet is merely another vessel. He has an army waiting at the moon to colonize the stars. The cold blue of space will be crimson with the blood of his enemies.
Why don't you join us? We can stop him. Together we just need to.
Baby, don't you see? I'm just like you. I deserve punishment for my sins. Kill me.
She said before injecting an overdose of endorphins into herself, with all the aroma that plagued the city consuming her skin, her eyes wide open with a glee as before she could even react. She had already grabbed Cedus right in his shoulder. Metal grabs her by the neck and shuts her away. She said before injecting an overdose of endorphins into herself, with all the aroma that plagued the city consuming her skin, her eyes wide open with a glee as before she could even react. She had already grabbed Cedus right in his shoulder. Metal grabs her by the neck and shuts her away. Majin starts to rush up the stairs of the pillar to save the remaining survivors, all while Metal and Cedus fight Lust up the stairway. Lust lunges at Metal with her own samurai sword while Cedus grabs her by the neck. She resisted by jumping off the guardrail and slamming them both to the ground, pursuing her chase towards Majin. Metal gets up first and grabs Cedus by the neck, only to chuck him 5 stories high, landing Cedus right in front of the Lust. Cedus clashes his blade with Lust. The slashes just centimeters from each other's hearts as Majin continues to rush up the stairs. She looked outside and saw Metal flying around the tower, deciding to bash himself through the wall against the two lovers, his hand right through Lust's arm. The action ensues, however, as Lust tears off Metal's arm entirely in revenge, using it to slap Cedus away.
I've always wanted to have children, my dear. What was the name you wanted to give our baby girl?
Majin!
The red panda girl turns around and sees Lust right in front of her, only to slowly look down, her blade right through her torso. Majin looks up at the demon, her smile infectious as Majin starts to chuckle as well. This causes a sudden confusion in the demon as she then saw the girl disappear. Just then, she felt a bump in her head, then another. Holograms of Majin all around the staircase. Lust grew infuriated as she then tries to slice each and every one of them by hand, trying to find which one was the real one, knowing only she could crack the codes to the tower's defenses.
We're never gonna beat her like this. She's too unpredictable.
Affirmative. We only slow each other down.
Are you saying I can't find you in Reject?
I'm saying we cannot bicker. I'm thinking what the real Sonic would do, and this isn't it.
So what do you suggest?
Lust's laugh took over the entire tower. She cuts down child after child, forming tears knowing this was the life she was destined to have, and that she always wanted this to never come to her. All while Majin, the real one, was outside the tower, climbing by her own bare hands, knowing that Cedus was counting on her. Lust's mascara flows down her skin, while her hair was turning into a drunken mess, but her ears perked up as a metal clank smashed the stairs behind her. She looked over in utter disbelief.
The real Sonic would believe in his own world.
Metal Metal
real Sonic would
utter
believe in his
satisfaction,
own world.
encasing his own body around the Sonic vessel, the two of them becoming one as Cedus used it as a plate of armor. Now with the energy of pride and greed and speed, before Lust could react, Metal had her by the hair, dragging her face across the tower walls, flying in a spiral upwards with each brick plate of wood hitting her face until nosediving to the ground with her. Lust looks up at the tower, only to be met with the now infused vessel of Sonic, Chrome Cedus.
I didn't know you swung that way, baby.
Cedus didn't have time for games, however. They decided to execute the demon right on the spot. She was already too far gone enough with her carnage. But that was until Metal's sensors went haywire, noticing an increasing amount of life forms approaching. It was a mob.
Go. She needs you.
Metal screams as he passes parts of himself to keep Cedus alive, like a car battery. Cedus had enough energy to start dashing up the stairs, making it floor after floor in seconds. Majin reached the top of the tower. The rain pouring down after years of holding it in, the thunder crashing down at the citizens causing a fire to erupt, only to see them all climbing at the very tower she was on. But she didn't have time to panic. She pulled out her supplies to save the other children, to save what's left of this world. Only for one of the mindless people to grab her leg. She pushes him off and he tumbles to the ground, his head splattering everywhere. While more and more wanted to hold the child, she slams herself through the roof, accessing the bunker where all the children were being held. They were all her age. It has been such a long time since she saw people like her. But she didn't have time. She had to input the controls and manage the bunker. Until she noticed something. It wasn't a bunker. It was a spaceship. Of course, it would transport them into the moon. She began hacking in. All of the children stared until they started to help as well, stating that Lust knew someone would come help them, that they were the future. Majin smiled and kept pressing on. Cedus reaches the final floor, but a sudden gust of wind tumbles him away from the door. Lust leapt from the first floor to the 99th, Metal again holding on to her, only for the three of them to ensue the fight. Metal fusing with Cedus once more, slamming her head again and again, breaking the tower through the cracks, causing the citizens to tumble down, only for Lust to break his exposed arm. Cedus yelled out in pain before falling down a flight of stairs. Lust was beaten badly. Any normal demon would die at the spot, but she was running off of pure adrenaline, every fiber of reason lost to her. Her own body doesn't even listen. That's what lust is, craving pure bliss.
You wanted a kingdom of blood. You wanted the planet burned to the core. What happened to the man who spent years, centuries, decades loving the idea of torturing this planet? What happened to the great God who was going to paint the sea red? You made us do this. You did. You promised us a life beyond suffering.
Lust yelled. Her teeth had already fallen out, her arms torn apart, her eye socket ripped open, and yet she still stood on both feet, with a smile. Her blade chipping away but still cutting the very ground it slid across as she walked up the stairs. She raises her arms in the sky, ready to land the final strike. All Cedus could think of was the prettiest woman he's ever seen. In pure bliss. He only wished to see her no longer in pain. And here it was he accepted his fate. He knew the world was better off without him. And that Metal would take care of this world. Just as the blade began to fall, she stopped dead in her tracks by Metal leaving Cedus' body, coming face to face with her as he sliced in half, only for him to punch his arm right through her chest. Cedus yells out in agony, watching as the future he had set was now gone. The real Sonic looks back at Cedus, proud of what he has done.
I understand now. Choices are only made for people who are free.
Metal tumbles a bit, before falling 99 stories to the ground. All while Cedus could do was watch. Metal left the 3 deadly sins they have collected, and fusing them inside of the arm he had, propelling to Cedus' arm. It was like a gauntlet of the sins, and now he had them in his possession. He felt its power, its strength, its suffering. He controlled all the citizens to go back to how they were. Mindless and pure, he slowly walked up the stairs, through the door. He smiled knowing they had done it, only to find Majin have all the children hide behind her. Her tears overflowing with fear.
Majin,
Get out! Get out! Get out!
Majin, we don't have time for this, please.
Do you fucking take another step? Are you going to enslave us? Are you going to lead us into war? Is this ever going to end?
Majin, listen, we don't have a lot of time. We have to take them somewhere safe until he comes.
No! How does it not end with you dead? You're dying. I know it. You want to die in a blaze of glory, is that it? And let us fight on this torture that you made? You are the most foul demon ever made. You're not even a ruler of anything, and yet you deny everything.
She screamed. The demon was confused until he looked over at the control panel. They saw the whole fight and now she knew. He was a monster. That he was responsible for this. For all of this. Cedus looked at her. What was this feeling, for he couldn't tell anyone? It wasn't a rush, it wasn't a thrill, it was an emotion. But as he tried to react, through the window, he saw him.
I have nothing. I'm no god. I'm not even a mortal. I'm a monster. If you're ever going to listen to me, then this is what you listen to. You get to change who you are. But monsters like us don't. We don't have freedom. Not anymore.
Cedus said as he then walked back and closed the door, leaving the escape pod. Majin stared in confusion until the children felt the entire ground begin to shake. Cedus now had the strength of 3 deadly sins inside, and the first thing he did with such anguish was to save them. He grabs a pod by the bottom, aims it just right, and lunged it to the sky, aiming right at the planet Mars. A bold decision. Cedus turns around, face to face with the King of Wrath in the vessel of Shadow the Hedgehog. Cedus knew this fight. This one, he wasn't ready for, but he still stood his ground and lunged at him at Sonic speed, finally, for once, only for Wrath to hold his hand. It was so soft it felt as though Cedus hasn't even punched anything. You do not die today. You won't even die tomorrow. Wrath laughed, as he would then pull off Metal's arm that held the 3 sins and infuse them to Cedus' very core, extending his life to centuries. You will be a prisoner in prison, and not just a body, but that power. That is your true sin, Cedus. This is the cost of freedom. He smiles as he nods him cold. Instantly, Wrath grew his wings, slowly flying to the sky, flying to his home with Cedus in chains as other demons follow suit, capturing the citizens for their army. As Wrath was coming.